And welcome back to another episode of TWiP Weddings, and very exciting, we've got the band back together. Look at this. We have got both Robert Evans and Brian Caprici together in the same room at the same time.
I wonder if our listeners were starting to wonder if we were actually one and the same person because we're never seen together, or at least we haven't been seen
True.
together for a while.
Or you're like president and vice president, and you weren't allowed to be in the same podcast together.
Right.
They won't let me into Canada.
We got that wall.
Good to have everyone together.
Good to have everybody back. So this week we're going to be talking about the client experience. We're going to kind of go from the initial contact through image delivery and beyond. We'll share our advice for wedding photographers who want to create an exceptional customer experience for their clients. But before we get into the show, we want to remind you how you can participate. There are several ways you can interact with us. First, you can visit the website at thisweekinphoto.com/weddings. There you'll find the show notes for each episode, which contain links to everything we mentioned on the show. And you can also leave your comments and feedback for us in the comments section. If you have a question or you'd like to make a suggestion for a topic for a future episode, you can email us at twipwed@thisweekinphoto, or you can also click on the Contact Us button on the website to send us a message that way. And if you want to follow along, we're on Instagram. You can find us at TWiPwed, or also join our Facebook group, which is at facebook.com/groups/TWiPwed. So, without further ado, let's jump into the show. And like I say at the top, we're going to talk about the client experience, which I think is very important. We've talked a little bit about in the past about kind of how we go through our bookings and we meet with clients and album delivery. We've talked about those things, but I don't think we've ever really dove into the overall sort of client experience. So we wanted to spend some time today talking about what that looks like with our studios and even just in general what our experiences are with customer service or client service. So I know that Brian, you threw this topic out as a suggestion. Initially, you wanted to call the episode the customer experience, but I decided to change it to the client experience because
That works for me.
Yeah, well, I was listening to somebody the other day, and they had said that and it really struck a tone with me, is that customers buy something from you,
Yeah.
whereas a client is somebody that you're kind of going to take care of and trust. And I think, would you guys all agree that kind of that's the business that we're in is more, it's not that, the transaction of just a customer buying some photographs from us. We're really kind of taking care of them, be it if we're doing their wedding or other types of photography that we're doing for them. Would you guys agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I would say that like a customer would be like a one-time purchaser, whereas a client is someone that you have a longer relationship with. I think, and I haven't really thought about this much, but just in hearing you say that, I actually love it. I think people come in as customers, and it's our job to turn them into clients, to make them someone that we have more relationship with.
Yeah.
That's just a thought.
Robert, what do you think? Has that been kind of what you try to do at your studio, is really build customers into clients that you will continue to do, family photos for them, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the part of, photographing weddings I think that I like is that, yes, I'm not going to get invited over dinner to every one of my customers' houses after I do the wedding, but I have many of them over the years that, I've shot their births and their babies, and even now that I'm getting old, their kids' bar mitzvahs, and
The circle of life.
yeah, so it's like, boy, the first time I did that, I was all, oh man. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the great part of it, and I really like the just being able to maintain those friendships, whether they're few and far between, or you haven't talked to somebody in years, but they call you like, hey Robert, we have this coming up and thought of you, or I really like that aspect of it, just being able to pick up the phone. That's one of the things people always ask me about celebrity stuff, and that's kind of one of the things that I is my least favorite about it is, after you photograph the wedding, you kind of get cut off, and rightly so. I mean, they're busy, and but I like just to be able to pick up the phone and call my client if that's what I want to do.
So Tom and Katie didn't invite you over for barbecues and stuff after the?
Yeah, I know. I didn't get the barbecue invite.
So it's an interesting experience, I think. What do you guys think is the difference between somebody that you build that relationship with and somebody that maybe you don't? Like you say, you don't have to be best friends with every single client that you shoot their wedding. But what do you think is the key kind of component when you build that kind of special relationship with a client that has you have them think of you first when it comes to photographing the rest of their life kind of moments?
Well, probably having a great experience, on their wedding and the whole process, of course. But I think you probably naturally, and you guys can probably attest to this, there's certain clients that you just gravitate to more and become friends with, from doing their wedding than others. And probably a little bit of that is you just connect as individuals in that, even if you didn't photograph their wedding and somehow you met them at a party, you probably would become friends with them.
Yeah. Do you find with destination weddings that you build that a little stronger just because you're possibly there with them over a longer period of time?
I find with the destination wedding that I build the relationship with the guests, which is one reason that I like that. And usually it's 3-4 days of events. So by the time you get to the wedding day, the guests are very comfortable and familiar with you. And I'm one of those photographers that really tries to interact with people and sort of be a part of the event and not just be the outside person taking pictures and being stiff and boring. So by the time you get to the wedding, I see that end of it. It depends on how I get hired for destination. Whether you stay in contact with people or you can do stuff, because a lot of the times you're not in the same state.
Yeah. Brian, how about you? What do you find? What clients do you kind of connect with the most, and how does that relationship kind of evolve?
I have a bit of a different opinion on the whole like connection friend sort of thing versus client. Like I sort of, I mean, obviously having a great connection and relationship is super important with your clients for obvious reasons. If you want to enjoy what you do, being able to connect with people and enjoy spending time with them is great. But I actually don't think that we need to be like BFFs with all of our clients type of thing. I mean, certainly there might be those, like Robert said, that you connect with that you would have connected with whether they had hired you or not type of thing. Like if you saw them at a party, they would just be your people type of thing. But I don't think that we have to just assume that that's always got to be the case. I think a lot of educators in our industry right now, sort of put on this or they talk about this whole idea where like we have barbecues with all of our clients and like all of our clients always get together with us and we have these big parties with them and all these things, and I just think that it's easy as a listener to the podcast or maybe someone that isn't in the place where they're building these big brands or doing these things exceptionally well to feel discouraged by saying like, well, I don't have that kind of relationship with my clients, so what am I doing wrong? And I don't think it's that they're doing anything wrong. I just think that their expectations are in the wrong place. I don't think that we have to be best friends with everybody. I think that we can be professionals and deliver a great customer experience, regardless of sort of where that customer falls on the friend scale.
Right, and that can sometimes make the relationship even a little bit more complicated, right? When it comes to business things, if if something happens, if they become too close as friends, then where do you kind of draw that line? Sometimes it becomes a little harder to manage the business side of the relationship.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about customer service or client service. What does that look like to you guys? Just set aside your own photography business and with your clients. What as a consumer going out and looking for things, what do you look for? What do you think makes up a great customer experience or a great client experience? Robert, I'll start with you.
I think probably what impresses me as a customer in whatever business I'm in, I think is just the little things. It doesn't have to be big and dramatic, but sometimes it's just the little things that you're like, oh, that's kind of cool that they did that. Whether it's like, well, one of the things that I try to do in my business that I like that's a little thing, and then I've kind of learned that is just a handwritten note. I have stationery. Those of you watching, I'll hold it up on my desk. They're little cards. They're very simple. Has my logo on it. It's thick, and I can just write, even if it's 3 sentences. Hey Lisa, thanks for the blah blah blah. It was great seeing you. We don't get handwritten stuff in the mail hardly ever anymore, or let alone a letter. So I think I have to take a lot of extra time to write this because I have the most horrible handwriting. I should have been. I usually use a pencil. And
what kind of pencil do you use, Robert?
There's many pencils that Mr. Caparici has mentioned. But I use, the old normal, number 2.
Good old number 2.
It makes me feel like I'm back in school taking a test, filling in a bubble. But that's like just one example. Let me think, like what other thing? Just even when you're in a restaurant, I think sometimes when you're in a restaurant, even if it's not a nice restaurant, and you can tell the manager comes over and says, "How was your meal?" Just sort of like opening up the opportunity, like little things like that. So I mean, without rambling on too long, I think for me it's kind of the little things sometimes that I take notice of, notice what other businesses do, and then sometimes say, well, how could I incorporate that into my business to sort of be a better customer service or offer something that will, definitely stand out.
Yeah. Brian, how about you? What does great client or customer service look like for you?
So I'm really glad that you asked it that way, because when I've spoken on this, and I actually have a PowerPoint up just behind our thing here, because I've given a 3-hour lecture on the topic of delivering a customer experience. And I think one of the things that a lot of the times photographers and maybe even entrepreneurs in general sometimes mistake is that customer experience is not the same thing as customer service. And I like to kind of make that distinction, because I think customer service is just, you're basically meeting expectations, right? It's like the print arrives on time,
right?
Or you take good photos, or you get back to them within a reasonable amount of time. Like, that's customer service. That's just like servicing the needs and the expectations that they have for you as a business owner. And most people do just that. But customer service does not guarantee customers for life. It does not guarantee customer loyalty. And there's a funny quote that I love to use by an author by the name of Jeffrey Gitomer. Have you guys read any of Jeffrey's books by chance, or no?
No, I have not.
Definitely recommend it. He's a great author, and he's got like really quickly readable books, so you can like go through it in like an afternoon type of thing. But the one that sticks out for me is, he says, would you rather have customer satisfaction or customer loyalty? And when he asks it that way, sometimes it's like, not really sure. But then ask it a different way and say, would you rather your spouse be satisfied or loyal? Right? And when he puts it that way, it's like, well, yeah, I definitely want loyalty, right? And I think that we all want customer loyalty, but I don't think that customer service in and of itself will guarantee us customer loyalty. So I see customer experience as being those things, like Robert said, that you go above and beyond, those things that you do that exceed the expectations, and those are the kinds of things that guarantee customer loyalty.
Very good. So can either of you guys think of a recent, or it doesn't necessarily be recent, but something recently that's happened to you from a customer experience that you would say kind of was the above and beyond, that's kind of got your your loyalty to a particular brand or a particular business? Can you think of, or can you name a brand or a business?
I can give you one that didn't happen to me. I guess happened to us, my wife. In February, we were going to Cancun. I had a wedding, but a little vacation down there as well. And she had called, I believe was it our bank? No, yeah, her credit card, and said, hey, I'm going to Mexico. Sometimes they'll shut your credit cards off if they see a weird charge. And, they said, great, thanks for letting us know. And I believe it was a Chase card. And before we left, or shortly after that, she got like a $25 gift certificate in the mail, and I forget for where, and it was just like, thank you for being a loyal customer. And I was like, what? What was that for? And I could only assume that maybe because fraud is so prevalent within credit cards, maybe it was just saying, hey, thanks for letting us know, this is going to save us a ton of money, so we can afford to send you $25 gift card.
Nice. Brian, how about you? You got an example of a...
Yeah. So it's probably 3 years ago. I go to the same auto mechanic for everything that I do, and I went there, and I think that they were fixing something with like a ball bearing and a wheel or something like that. There was some rattling that was happening. So I went there. They got it all fixed. Everything was good. I went and picked up the car, and as I was driving the car, back, I think I was actually going to a photo shoot. I'm driving over a set of train tracks, and so it's a little bit bumpy. And as I get on the other side of the train tracks, all of a sudden I feel like the entire weight of my car completely shift over, and I kind of jolted backwards. I'm like, whoa, that does not feel right all of a sudden, right? So I pull over the side of the road, and I get out and I look, and the one wheel had actually half fallen off, and it was now on an angle. So the wheel wasn't properly secured back to my car. So here I am driving, and it's like, good thing I was on a back road, not cars coming my direction, could have been really bad, right? So the wheel fell off my car. Holy cow! So immediately, obviously, I called the auto mechanic, and I just say, hey, my wheel fell off. Is that a problem?
Is that supposed to happen?
Is this normal? Right? And this is the sort of point of differentiation where you look at, customer service is them, saying, oh, okay, obviously we apologize, let's get this fixed, let's do this, can you, have a tow truck bring it in, blah, blah, blah. Like, that would be customer service. They'd be like fixing the problem that they obviously created because maybe obviously they didn't put the tire back on properly or something. So that's customer service. But what they did from a customer experience standpoint is the owner actually drove over to where I was, picked me up, drove me to my shoot, waited while I was there, drove me back. They arranged having the tow truck come and everything. They brought the tow truck, or my car with the tow truck back to their shop, had it fixed. When I got back there, it was to my surprise that they had actually fixed the rear wiper that I was sort of debating getting done because it was like $1,000 and I didn't really feel like spending it at that time. They fixed it for me without charging me anything. They washed my car, and then they left a little package for me on the front seat saying that they're sorry, and it was like a little thing of popcorn or something.
Wow.
And it was all ready by the time my shoot was done, and the owner picked me up, brought me back over there, and obviously they apologized and everything. And everything they do from that point forward, those are the things that make the customer experience super important. And it took what could have been a really bad situation. Like, I could have gotten upset and been like, oh my gosh, that could have been fatal. Like, that was a horrible thing. Like, you guys didn't do what you did. But I understand people make mistakes, right? I mean, whenever you have people involved, there's going to be a mistake at some point because we're human. And, them exceeding my expectations in that way is what made the customer experience so great that now I still go back to that same shop to this day. Whereas if they had just dealt with it, to my expectations, I may have been a little bit peeved off and said, like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm kind of really pissed off now. I might look around for somebody else. So that's where I sort of differentiate the customer service and the customer experience, and that example made a loyal customer out of me.
Right. So it's that, opportunity to gain a customer for life, right? As opposed to
exactly.
just, they could have, like you say, they could have fixed the problem, but that may not have left you, satisfied.
Well, and
right?
the thing is like them fixing the problem, like I expected them to. Like, you guys screwed up. I'm obviously expecting that you fix the problem. But the fact that they went above and beyond, those are the things that really, stand out to me to make it a differentiator. And I think the lesson that I like to encourage photographers to consider in all these conversations is that the customer experience doesn't happen on accident. It does not happen on accident. If you just leave it to, like, let's see how each day goes, and maybe today I'll send a handwritten note, maybe today I won't, maybe today I'll do this for a client, maybe tomorrow I won't. Like, if you just let it happen, it's going to be a completely accidental customer experience, and sometimes you'll do great, sometimes you won't, and you won't have any kind of consistency. I'm a big believer, you guys know, in planning and doing things with intent, right? Doing things deliberately. And so I like to teach and help photographers, look at what are the things that you can do in your business. Like, let's actually design the customer life cycle and say, this is when they inquire, this is when I'm sort of done the transaction with them. There's a lot of things that can happen in between there. What are some of the things that we can design in there? What are some sort of touch points? What are some customer experience things that we can do? What are some ways that we can exceed expectations at all those different touch points that will make a great customer experience on purpose? And then how can we find a way to implement that every single time consistently? I think that's what separates a photography business that's doing this long term and that can successfully have a plethora of loyal customers versus someone that kind of has a few people that are really happy and a few people that aren't, and they're kind of all over the place with the ups and downs.
Yeah. So do you think the mechanic left the tire off loose a little bit just to create that great customer experience?
So what
That
we're
part of his
suggesting, like, take some really shitty photos for part of the wedding day, and that way you can intentionally have a way to exceed expectations.
Great.
No, that's
there goes
not
our
what I'm
clean
suggesting.
bag. There goes our clean bag.
Oh no! I just put us into the explicit rating.
Now we're
didn't
in the
I?
explicit
sorry.
range.
Oh
Maybe,
no!
maybe we'll edit that out.
Okay.
Didn't they give you a card too, Brian, that said that's not how we roll?
Yeah. Oh.
I like that. I'm gonna introduce you guys.
I've got a small example of just and it's a little thing. We were releasing just shop. We just went out shopping one day for some clothes. I can't remember exactly where all we went. We went shopping for some clothes, and we went to H&M. You guys familiar with the H&M store, right? It's not very expensive, right? It's a kind of cheap clothing store. I think Madonna's involved with it or somebody, I don't know, but so we went in there and I bought a couple of just dress shirts. They had some nice dress shirts that were on, fairly inexpensive. So I'll pick up a couple dress shirts for this season, and they just kind of like flipped them together and just kind of jammed them in the bag and handed it over to me. And then we went to another store that wasn't a lot more expensive than H&M, and it was a store that my wife likes to shop at called Loft. And she bought something in there, and they like took the time to like really nicely fold it and put it in some nice tissue paper with a little sticker and slide it in the bag nicely. The girl came around the counter to hand the bag to us, and so even just the presentation of the product was something that I noticed and thought that's something that we can incorporate into our business, right? It's a little thing, and it doesn't cost a lot to spend the extra time to just properly wrap something in just the way you deliver it and present it to the client. So that was sort of a recent experience, one recent experience that kind of I thought of, that I thought, it just showed it wouldn't have taken that clerk at H&M any longer. It wouldn't, to nicely fold the shirts and put them in the bag. There wasn't a giant lineup behind me. There wasn't, anything like that. But she just kind of like took the 3 shirts, just sort of like flapped them inside each other and just sort of dropped them in the bag. And there was no kind of care or attention. It was sort of like, here you go, next. Right. So that was something that stood out to me. And then another a recent example, didn't happen to me, but it's a pizza shop just opened up in our city not that long ago, a couple months ago. It's a place called Love Pizza. Really, really good pizza. And a friend of mine, my friend Blake, she is in the middle of doing a photography project to raise awareness around mental health issues. And she goes to this pizza place a lot, like 4 times a week maybe. Like she's a frequent flyer of this pizza shop. And so they know her really well, and they're pretty active on social media, and they actually caught wind of her project. And so for this entire month, they are donating $1 from every sale of pizza at their establishment to her project that she's doing. You can guarantee she's going to be eating pizza there for a very, very long time, because they went that extra. The expectation would have been, make me a pizza, make sure it's cooked well and tastes good, right? They went above and beyond that, right? So I think they've got a customer for life. So those are a couple of recent examples that I've run across that really kind of stood out for me.
There's something that it's a quote that's sort of really well known in the selling world, and I think it helps illustrate what we're talking about here, and it's the idea that people don't buy products, they buy better versions of themselves, right? In the sense that I think that photography, actually, I think we're going through a huge shift right now, in the sense that the industry has, I wouldn't say it's been commoditized, but certainly the perception of photography to the average consumer, because everybody has a camera on their phone, everybody can filter their photos on Instagram, the ability to buy a DSLR and do it has become obviously more and more easy, and then with that, more and more photographers have come into the market. I think that we're getting away from the idea that we're selling pictures or photographs, but instead I think that our clients will increasingly buy experiences that we can provide, and the photographs or the pictures become just a byproduct of that. And I think that's where the customer experience really comes into play. Like, if we don't make our business about doing more than the basic expectation, which is that we take pictures and give the pictures to the client, then I think we're going to find ourselves in a place in a few years where we're not having enough business to stay afloat.
Yeah, Robert, how do you feel on that? You've probably seen that, right, over your career, kind of this commoditization that Brian speaks of?
Well, yeah, I mean, you definitely see that. I mean, photography has definitely become devalued, based on digital, but like Brian, I think the biggest point is because people have cameras on their phones and they don't, like, well, I can take this picture, and why should I have to pay the photographer this much money?
Mm-hmm.
I can hire somebody to do that. And look at the backside of that, all the stories that you hear of somebody that's upset when their wedding pictures turn out terrible. It's because they had a bad experience usually. And part of that, yes, is, typically bad photographs, but the experience of someone not knowing how to deal with a situation, not knowing what to take in a situation, not knowing how to deal with sensitive issues, that's the experience part. So that's where, it does still obviously pay. And it's interesting. I mean, this is, I'm preaching to the choir here, but, you see people, what's the one thing, we've read 100 articles on that, but that's the one thing that you have left when the wedding day is all over, of course, are your photographs. And that's what people value the most, but yet it's the one thing that people want to spend the least on at the wedding. They'll spend $40,000 on flowers and cry about a $4,000 photographer when, if photography is your priority and your memories are your priority, then that should be put to the top of the priority list and thought about But because of this whole generalization of like, oh, photography, it's digital, why should I pay more than that? Of course I deal with that because I'm in a higher end type of market or clientele, but I'm also marketing to those higher end type of people. I think I get the people who appreciate that and want better quality, because generally that's kind of what I hear consistently is, even if people found me on the web, they're like, your pictures were just so completely different than what else is out there. But anyway, ultimately that's what I think is a result of that. And the other thing I wanted to kind of go back to a little bit is when Brian was talking about his experience with the tire. I think if we just break that down simplistically in what we do as photographers, we can obviously gain a valuable lesson there. But we're there's going to be one customer at least. Not every single one of our clients are going to be extremely happy. We're going to do something wrong. We're human beings. We're photographers. But it's sort of asking yourself in your own business, with that story that Brian gave, what can I do to, right the wrong, but also, go above and beyond? Because just like Brian, he could have been, and again, it's a personality type too, I think. But, the client, in that situation, Brian had a very like Lyle, he could have been hurt, and I'm sure I know the a mechanic recognized that and like, oh boy, we better kiss some butt. But I think if you kind of have that attitude, even if you do something minor like, oh, you missed the shot of the flower girl or whatever it is that the client's unhappy with afterwards, you just ask yourself like, okay, how can I write it, but how can I go above and beyond and to make them happy? Almost like play it as like a game. Like, what can I do? What's the challenge that I can win this person back over and make it. And you could and even think about going above, like doing something monetarily. It's really easy for us to say, oh, we'll give you a free family sitting, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. Yes, you might want to do that, but then what could you do? Even as like I mentioned, maybe it's as simple as actually sitting down, writing a card to that person and saying, I realize you must be upset about this, and I apologize, and I am just human, but I want to make it up to you, or whatever your wording is. But I mean, just break that down in your own business and think about how we can challenge ourselves to make each one of those unhappy situations turn into a positive.
Yeah, those complaints are opportunities for to gain that loyal customer. And I know I've been guilty of this in the past. I can certainly think of examples where
Sure, we
I get where I get it gets personal, because it is photography. What we do is fairly personal, right? And so when something doesn't go right, or maybe the expectations were not clearly defined, or maybe they were but they didn't, for whatever reason, we can debate the semantics of it, but it can get very personal, right? And I know I've had situations where I can get a bit defensive about it. That's just a bit of my personality. I've had to learn to rail that in a little bit and look at, okay, if there's a problem or a complaint, what's the reason for it, and how can we go about solving it? And sometimes the customer isn't always right, but they're still the customer at the end of the day. They're still the client at the end of the day. I was just at CPC, and Heather Jowett spoke, and her topic of her talk was "I effed up, now what?" And it was basically all about sort of the client experience, the customer service. And she mentioned something that she said, there's customer service, she goes, and then there's pest control. She said sometimes there are some that just, you just have to kind of clean it up and move on, and they're not going to be your best friend. You're probably not going to gain them as a loyal client. But look at every one of those opportunities as an opportunity to improve your business, to improve your customer service. So that's something that I'm trying to take to heart and really kind of implement more in our business, is try to not take it personally and try to look at it as an opportunity to improve. So I want to ask both of you guys, what do things look like at your guys' studios in terms of the client experience? Brian mentioned some planning and doing things with intent. What are some aspects of your studio, Brian, that are done with intent, specifically around the client or the customer experience?
Oh gosh, like everything. What we did many years ago, and it's always a refinement, but we literally said, okay, this is when we get the inquiry. So what can I now do to always show value, to always communicate what we do and why we do it, and how can I constantly exceed expectations in an industry that is bombarded and flooded and is perceived going down in value. So everything from the first inquiry, the way that we respond to the email, how we respond, when we respond to the email, we're constantly setting expectations in that. When they come into the studio for the meet and greet, I don't do Skype meet and greets. I don't do bookings without meeting with a client. Like I will not do it, and I'll wait until I can meet with them. Obviously, certain areas or whatever, you may not be able to do it if you're a destination wedding photographer and you're in California booking somebody from Vancouver. Maybe that isn't going to happen. But for the most part, for me, for my business, where all my clients are local, I always meet with them. And when I come in, their customer experience is highly, highly refined. Like everything from the way the studio is laid out, to the furniture they're sitting on, to the doorknobs that they're turning when they come into the studio, to the music that's on, to the coffee they're having, to the treats that I have out for them, to the albums that I put in their hands, to the way that I have a conversation with them. I'm always thinking, how can this be the most refined and the most elegant customer experience that I can possibly give to them? So I do that. The package that I give them, like the price list or whatever, it's not just like, here's an 8.5 by 11 that I printed out on my printer. It's this beautiful package that I've created and worked with the local branding specialist to make these custom things for me with a custom book. And I probably have them here if I wanted to show them to you guys. But it's a book that I have created and had printed through Amazon as if I was publishing a book. And it's a book of my portfolio, and I use that as a way to talk to them about how I believe in printed photography as opposed to digital photography, and this is my portfolio for you to enjoy and share if you don't want to have to go on a computer to enjoy my photography. So everything that I do in that is highly refined, and I've got clients that are saying, we can keep this? Oh, really? Like, it's this beautiful package. And they're saying, we can keep that? Oh my God, okay. Like, the last guy we saw just gave us a piece of paper or said he'd email us a PDF. And it's like, I know, that's probably your expectation. How can I exceed that?
Right.
So from that point forward, again, like the booking and everything that goes on with that, handwritten cards like crazy. We do those like crazy. So we have, like Robert, little printed branded cards that we mail out things with. What I actually have done, and I've refilled this a number of times, is I buy Starbucks gift cards in bulk. I actually buy them on their website, little $5 gift cards, or $10, I forget which one. But I buy 100 of them at a time, and whenever I'm writing a handwritten card or whenever it's necessary, whenever I think that it's appropriate, I'll just kind of slip that in and say, hey, just wanted to say thanks so much, have a coffee on me, type of thing. So I'm doing little things like that are really just exceeding the expectation. The month before the wedding, I'll order flowers for the bride and have them delivered at her place of business and say, hey, just really looking forward to it. Just wanted to have a little bit of positivity. You're probably stressed out and just wanted to kind of brighten your day a little bit. So here's a thing of flowers for you. There's all different kinds of things like that. But again, that's the process of me looking at the entire experience, what happens from start to finish, and where can I show up in a great way.
Nice. Robert, how about you? What do things look like at your studio? Do you similar? Obviously,
Well,
you've got you mentioned the handwritten notes.
I do, and I have done a lot of the same things Brian does. I mean, I can definitely relate to a lot of that. So I won't reiterate any of that. And I went from being in a studio for years and years and years to working out of my home. But I do have a studio, a small space now where I meet clients, and it's for my local stuff, but it's smaller than what I had, but I make sure that it's neat and clean and all those things. And yes, my price list is printed and nice and it matches those cards that I showed you. I mean, as well as my business cards, it's all sort of cohesive in the branding. But beyond all the other things that Brian mentioned, I think one of the other things too is sort of on the back side of customer service. Like, I think one of the things that I hear in today's photography world is, photographers like, yeah, I'll get your proofs back to you in 4 to 6 weeks. For me, that's like, what? Again, I've said this before, but I started off shooting film. We used to turn proofs in 2 weeks, and that's because you put your film in a bag on Monday, it came back on Friday. Usually the client wasn't back for their honeymoon, and that's why it was 2 weeks. But I really make an effort to make sure that I deliver proofs in 2 to 3 weeks, so the client, has that experience. Maybe shoot them 4 or 5 of my favorite pics of the day and get them small files so that they can use them for social media. I mean, so this is like post stuff that you can do. I just try to do what I say I'm going to do. If I say I'll have your book or your album or whatever it is by this time, I really try to make sure that actually happens. So I am, yes, just meeting expectations, but I do things. I've done all the things that Brian said. I don't do them consistently, and I think sometimes that's important, to keep those thoughts. Like when Brian said flowers, I'm like, oh, I remember when I did that.
Yeah.
That's a cool one. Or to a special client, or the gift card, I think is a great idea to the right person.
Yeah.
Because even if it's $5, like Brian said, they're going to get one, maybe two cups of coffee out of it, but they're going to think of you. And again, it goes back to what I said. It's just that tiny little thing that they're going to take note of. Because I think in today's world, we don't take time to do little things anymore. I think some of the habits that Brian has and the things that I've done in the past were something of the past. I mean, Brian's currently doing, but it was done a little bit more prevalently back in the time before we had computers and email and, all of those things. And I think people forget about that stuff. And so when you bring the past back and you write a handwritten note or something like that, I think that really stands out to people. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that.
There's something that Robert, you said that I maybe just want to comment on, because I think that photographers can learn a lot from this, and it's the idea you said about delivery times, right, for images.
Yeah.
Something that I've always been in the practice of is, like, first of all, I think that we have to have an understanding of what we can actually physically do. If you can turn around a wedding in 2 weeks, great, okay, that's what you can do. Obviously, see what you can do to make that faster, but if that's just what works for you and for your workflow and your lifestyle, great. But I've always been in the practice of saying, okay, this is what I know I can do. I'm actually going to add some time on that, and that's what I tell the client. So if I know that their prints will come in 2 weeks, I'll tell them your prints will be in 4 weeks. Or if I know their album will come in from my lab in 5 weeks, I'll say, yeah, it usually takes anywhere from 6 to 7 weeks for the album to come in. So that way I'm sort of setting the expectation here, knowing that I'll be able to exceed it. But that also kind of gives a bit of playroom where it's like, if things go bad or you get hurt or you get really sick or whatever, and you actually can't meet your typical deadlines, you're not disappointing the client when you do that. So I think that's a great lesson, right? It's like, if you know that's what you can do, then just tell your clients a little bit more than that and leave that buffer space, so either you exceed expectations, or worst case scenario, you're still at least meeting them.
Yeah, absolutely.
What you just said, Brian, I think that we do, and I'm guilty of this sometimes too. You mentioned, all right, so you tell your clients 6 weeks for their book, and 4 weeks comes along, album company calls you and says, oh, Brian, we had a problem, and so we're going to have to reprint. It's going to be another 4 weeks, and you're like, uh-oh, now it's going to be 8 weeks. My client's going to be pissed.
Right.
But if we get in front of that, so it really just comes back down to communication. Maybe you write that handwritten note, like Brian said, and said, hey, Lisa, just got word from your album company that, there was a problem. We're going to have to reprint. It's going to take couple extra weeks longer. I'm really sorry. Here's a $5 gift card. I hope you understand. People just want to be communicated to, and you don't even have to pander to them and give them the gift card.
Totally.
But even if she just received a note that said, hey, I'm sorry that's happened, you don't even have to call them if you're afraid they're going to yell at you. Send that little note and just say, really sorry, but you're letting them know what's going on. Because I think if we've all put ourselves in that same position, like you order something on Amazon. Well, now it tells you like when it's going to come, but you sort of anticipating, okay, it's going to be here Thursday. If it doesn't show up on Thursday when Amazon said it's going to be there, you're like, where the hell is it?
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of that same mentality.
Well, and it's being proactive, right? Like I've always held the mentality that if a client has to call me and say, where is something, then I've done my job. Or I haven't done my job. Sorry, not that I've done my job. I haven't done my job, right? It's like we want to be proactive and say, hey, just wanted to touch base. This is going to be a little bit delayed. Here's what's happening. Or set the expectation so it's longer. So again, when you call 2 weeks before you told them, they're pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think communication is such a key in in everything. We've talked about setting expectations and communication before in previous episodes, but I mean it's all part of that client experience and the customer kind of customer.
I think it's foundational to the customer experience because people will come in, our clients will come in with their worldview. They'll come in with their own biases, their own set of expectations. Their friend got married last year and they got a book in this much time, or they did family portraits last year and here's what they got from that. And so they kind of bring that baggage with them, and unless we address it and communicate with them and set their expectations for what the experience will be like when they're dealing with us, we leave them to make assumptions, and then if we don't meet those assumptions, which sometimes we don't even know what those assumptions are, then now we look bad whether we can control it or not. So I think setting expectations is a huge part of being able to deliver great customer service and a great customer experience.
Yeah, and an interesting kind of observation that I've had over the years is when I look back at like when customers leave us reviews or clients leave us reviews, I would say out of like 10 reviews, 9 out of those 10 the review has absolutely nothing to do with the photos. Like
Yeah,
it's almost always about
totally.
the experience that they had with us, that they had fun with us, that the wedding party and their family enjoyed being with us. We didn't make them feel stressed on their day. We went kind of above and beyond. So I was going to ask you guys, kind of on the wedding day itself, are there specific things that you guys do on a wedding day that help create that customer experience? I can give you some of the things that we do. Like we'll
Yeah.
bring little things, like we'll bring snacks and water. And we
Yeah.
bring extra
Awesome.
snacks and water
Yeah.
because we know inevitably they're going to sometimes even though we remind them during the pre-wedding consult, they're going to forget that stuff. So we bring snacks and water, or we'll bring bug spray, or these kinds of things that they'll probably forget. And wow, just that, having like some cheesies and a bottle of water for the bride when she's hangry can make a world of difference, and they
Yeah.
will remember that over anything else that happened on the day most of the time.
Right.
Like that was literally one of the reviews that we got, was Bruce and Sarah brought us snacks on the wedding day, and that was one of the reasons they really had a great experience. How about you guys? Is there things on the wedding day that you guys do, specifics that?
Yeah, I know for me, one of the things that that is super important is just keeping that um, the communication and the relationships, like, again, exceeding expectations. I know we keeps coming up, and I don't have a specific example with that, but just constantly being likable and relatable and laughing, calling people by their name. I mean, that's a huge thing, that if you can
Mm,
just
that's a good
memorize
one.
everyone's names and then use their names throughout the day, they're
Hmm.
going to feel like, that you really care. And I think if you're not having the bridesmaids and the groomsmen come up to you at the end of the wedding day and saying, "Oh my gosh, like, you did such a great job, or you're such a great photographer," we have that all the time, and I often then say, "Yeah, but how can you say that? You haven't even seen the pictures yet."
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? But obviously they're doing it just based on the experience that we delivered through the day. So one thing that I would, really really encourage everyone listening to go out and read is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, because there's some really foundational communication and relationship principles in that book. One of them being call people by their name, that will really help people feel, or make people feel like you care and that you genuinely do care. And those are the kinds of things that will give a great experience to the customer on the day of.
Yeah. Robert, how about you? Any specific things
I
that you
do
do?
I do the same thing with the names. Like, so when I'm in the room getting ready,
Oop,
I just sort of listen
there's,
to what.
you were siloning there for a little minute.
Oh,
Oh, that seems better now.
when I'm in the room with the bride getting ready, I listen to the other bridesmaids and hear what their names are, and then one of the tricks you can do to try to remember the name is just sort of relate them. Oh, Lisa, I have a friend Lisa, whatever, so you can kind of remember who those girls are. And even if I only remember one or two of their names when I'm doing the portrait and I've got the group and I'm like, hey Lisa, could you slide over to the left a little bit? You could see them look at you like, wow, how does he know my name? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
type of thing. And I think overall, I mean, that's one thing I definitely try to do. But I mean, it just goes with my personality. But just overall, I'm pleasant to work with. I just try to be pleasant and have fun with people, and make it enjoyable. Suck up to the moms a little bit. Tell them they look pretty. Um, oh, mom, you look great. You have a great smile. Just like little compliments. It doesn't have to be fake and over the top. It's just like little things that you just sort of do throughout the day. But I think overall, just being pleasant. I mean,
Hmm.
I think that's one stereotype that wedding photographers get, is just like the kind of rude, bossy, pushy, things that you hear over the years. So you just try not, to be that person. And again, that all goes back to, having a stress-free wedding day, which we've done shows on before, is just being prepared and giving yourself time to make sure that it all happens, and educating your brides ahead of time on how not to be late and all those things, like basically take control. We don't need to go into that because we've done it, but that all works towards, letting you be calm and happy and successful on the wedding day.
Excellent. Very good advice. And you're styling still a little bit there, Robert, so we'll see if your mic sorts itself out. But I think those are all good tips and advice for some good, creating a good client experience for your clients. So I think let's jump ahead. And you guys want to take a listener question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So I think this listener may be writing a question directly to Robert. So this is the This is the Robert helpline. So we've got a question from Todd White. So you'll be happy to hear this, Robert. Todd has started his switch to the Sony system. He's got the A7R2, and he's using a Metabones adapter for Canon glass. He's asking for any tips on faster or more consistent autofocus, and also better focusing for receptions that are darker. And this maybe, Ryan, you and I can maybe lend some advice for just focusing in. But anything about the focusing, the Metabones, and all that good stuff?
Well, I mean, although the Metabones is a good product, and you can use your Canon glass, which I know is kind of the biggest obstacle for people to move over to the Sony system. Nothing's going to work better than native glass on the camera that it's made for. So there will be, glitches, I guess, if you will, using that adapter, but it does allow you. As far as focusing in the dark, or the A7R is a great camera, which has super high ISO. So, you don't be afraid to take that ISO up to 10,000 if you need to, and lighten up the room a little bit. And I use focus peakings a lot in mine, in a manual setting, so you don't always get to shoot manual in the dark, but sometimes maybe when you're shooting toasts or people talking, or focus peaking in Sony is it basically highlights the area where the focus is, so you can actually see it. So if it's harder to actually physically see the focus, you can see the focus peaking. So that's a great option to use in your Sony camera for that.
Cool. How about Brian? You got any tips for just the focusing in the low light situations, whether they're shooting Sony or another brand of camera?
Yeah, what I would say is you have to understand and look into like how the focusing system works for your camera, right? Like it depends if they're using a contrast detect autofocus, if it's a phase detect autofocus, depending on all that kind of thing. There's certain things that you can do to increase your chances of it hitting a nice focus. I know with phase detect, if you can move your focus box, that's probably really focus area.
Very technical.
Yeah, very technical. That little red box that moves around inside the camera.
Box thing.
If you can move it to focus on an edge of something, so instead of focusing on someone's forehead, move the box so it hits their eye, where there's edges and there's lines and there's contrast, you're going to have a better chance at focusing on that properly. So little things like that obviously are going to help in being able to hit that. But again, that just comes down to practice.
Yep.
I think with all that kind of thing.
Yep. And I know if like I shoot Canon, they only have some of the focus points are what they call cross focus points, where they can focus sort of both vertically and horizontally, and some of them aren't full cross points. So where possible, try to use the cross points in your focusing as well. You'll get probably a little more better chance of getting good focus. But hopefully all those things help Todd. So, of course, if you have a question that you'd like us to answer on the show, just head on over to thisweekinphoto.com and click on the Contact Us button to send us a message. You can also submit your questions by emailing us at twipwed@thisweekinphoto.com or send a tweet using the hashtag twipwed, and we'll look for those questions, or even in our Facebook group, too. You can throw up a question in there, and we'll look for questions there. All right, so that brings us to our next segment, which is our Picks of the Week segment. And each episode, we will share a photography-related item that we think would benefit wedding photographers. Our picks can be anything, as long as they're somehow related to photography or the business of photography. So, Brian, what have you got for us? And we all chuckled beforehand because Brian shared his pick with us beforehand. We all joked because we said, "Is it a pen?" And,
well, it's a stretch to say that it's related to the business of photography or to photography, but I'm going to make the stretch anyways because that's what I do.
You're related to the business of photography.
Wait, what's that, sorry?
I said you're related to the business of photography.
Yeah, see, this is true, yeah. So, okay, yeah, I like my nerdy, like, writing utensils and stuff. I think I picked the Kuru Toga pencil on a previous episode.
Yes.
Yeah, so I like these things. But the pen that I'm going to talk about today, my pick of the week is a digital pen. So it's a pen that, it's a pen that is still a regular pen that you write on paper with, but it digitizes it as you write on the paper, which is super cool for me. So the reason that I love this and the reason that I got it is because I write everything. Like I journal everything, every marketing idea, every blog post I write, everything I'm writing as we're talking here. I write everything. I always have notes. The problem is that over the past couple of years in doing everything with Sprout and education and all that, I've like amassed like 15 full notebooks now that I've written in.
Right.
So if I'm looking back to reference something, or if I am thinking, oh, I had this one thing or whatever, like I can never find it because I never know what notebook to find it in, and I never know how to actually find the page, even if I can find the notebook. So that's always been a challenge for me. So what I do with this is I actually write in this notebook. So the pen itself is the Neo Smart Pen. So it comes, you have to write on special paper, but it has a regular, pen in it, and so you write on the notebook. But
Okay.
as you're writing, it captures it digitally on the iPad app, at which point you can then manipulate it, you can tag it, you can share it, you can do whatever you want. So it makes archiving and categorizing and tagging and then finding things later so much easier. I can just go and search for any word, and it'll actually have transcribed my handwriting and then search for that word that I'm searching for. So I can go back and find anything after doing that. So it's a
Cool.
huge help for sort of archiving, journaling, and keeping everything organized better, which I'm obviously a huge proponent of, because wasting time looking for things in a notebook is not the best use of my time.
Yeah, nice. So does it require some training beforehand with
No.
like, do you have to teach it your handwriting, or it just picks it up?
It's great. Like, it's got a great OCR sort of algorithm built in. So I haven't done anything. I just pick up the pen, start writing, and it does it all properly.
Nice. And
Yeah.
so but you have to write in their notebooks, right? It's a special
So
paper.
I mean, in order to do it, the paper has like special encoding on it, so it knows where you are and all that kind of thing, and that's how it does the digitizing.
Cool.
So that's really the only way that you can do it.
So what's one looking at for one of those pens and a notebook?
Yeah, so for the whole kit and caboodle, you're like $180,
Okay.
roughly. Which it's people might be more familiar with LiveScribe, who's been around for a long time, that makes similar pens. And I had the LiveScribe, but it was like huge, and it felt like a highlighter in my hand. It was just massive. So I just didn't enjoy writing with it, and if I don't enjoy writing with it, I'm not going to write with it. So the Neo Smart Pen is more like the size of a regular ballpoint pen. So
Nice.
that's why I really love that one.
Awesome. Yeah, I was looking at the Jot script, I think, for it, because it integrates with Evernote.
Yep.
I like to use Evernote.
Yeah, so the Neo Smart Pen does too. So I actually have it turned on for auto sync. So every time I write in a notebook, it's already in my Evernote account by the time I get over there.
Damn it, you're going to cost me some money today, I think. Oh, I like that pick.
There you go.
All right, good pick. Mr. Evans, what have you got for a pick this week? Now, Sony didn't put out a camera this week, so you can't make a Sony camera pick.
But my pick of the week, I think, also comes with a pen. But I kind of told you guys this story before, but my pick of the week is the new iPad Pro. I basically got one on a whim. Long story, I had an old credit card, had a bunch of points, was getting rid of it, United card, and wasn't going to buy tickets on United, so I used the points to get the iPad Pro because it was a want, not a need. So I got it. You got the pen with it, and it's really pretty cool. I really like it. I've used it a little bit. I'm sort of just scratching the surface, but I've used it a little bit. It's fun to actually edit photos on it, whether you're using Lightroom Mobile or Snapseed or one of your apps. I want to see, more how I can utilize this tool in my business, maybe even at weddings. With the Sonys, of course, I can Wi-Fi images right to my phone. So of course now I can Wi-Fi them right to the iPad. So it might be kind of fun to do that with 7 or 8 different images. Have an assistant, maybe you gotta walk lightly on how you do that, but showing people. But to look at an image on the phone as opposed to looking at the iPad Pro, which is like a 15-inch screen or however big it is a heck of a lot different. So it's really impressive that way. But I'm enjoying it, just certain things but I don't have like any social on it. I sort of like no Facebook, no Instagram, no whatever. I'll keep that on my phone, and so that I'm not getting caught up in that. And the iPad Pro sort of has a different usage.
Yep. Very nice. Yeah, I've seen them at the Apple Store. I've been tempted, but I haven't pulled the trigger on one yet. But who knows? We'll see.
They're not the cheapest thing, but as an alternative to, they come with a real nice keyboard, which I don't have yet. But I mean, the iPad Pro is about $1,000, I think, and then the keyboard's another $200-300, and the pen's another $100. For $1,500, you kind of have a, new styled laptop, so to speak.
Yeah. Very good. All right, so that's the iPad Pro. Well, I've got 2 picks this week. So my first pick, I think I may have picked this before, but I can't remember. But I think it's always a good one. If you haven't read Purple Cow by Seth Godin, have you guys both read that book?
Yeah, it's a great book.
So it's a really good book. It kind of helps. It goes through kind of how to transform your business by being remarkable. So you're kind of looking, for a way to stand out. It's a really good, a good book. It's not necessarily specifically about customer service, but I think it's a good. It's related, I think. So.
Yep.
And then my second pick, which I think we've picked on the show before, but it reminded me when Robert was saying he hates writing, is there's a company out there called MailLift. And they will actually do, it's a handwritten letter service for professionals. So you can basically get them to do all your writing for you. So if you don't like, or if your handwriting's really bad, or if you just forget to do it, you can get these guys and they'll actually do handwritten letters for you. So you can, I think you just, email them what you want to say, and then they'll send it out as a handwritten letter from you. It's all personalized.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I think it comes from, it'll come from your local post office where you live and all the rest of that. So they don't really know that it's not coming from you. So, and there we go. The noise has begun in my house, so that's probably... Yes, construction has begun at my house. We're doing some kitchen renos, and so that's probably a great time to wrap the show up. So that's going to bring us to a close of another episode of TWiP Weddings. If you're listening on our website, please subscribe to the show using the box on the right. You can also sign up for our email list to be notified of new episodes and get exclusive subscriber bonuses. And if you have feedback, suggestions, or comments about the show, you can reach us directly by using our contact form. Just click on the Contact Us menu item at the top of the page. So, before we close out, what's everybody up to and where can our audience go to keep up with you, Mr. Caparici?
Just getting ready for wedding season and powering through over here with everything at Sprout Studio and sproutingphotographer.com, education, all those kinds of fun things. For anyone listening, sproutingphotographer.com is where we live. So I write all about the business of photography, and I have a podcast also all about the business of photography. So sproutingphotographer.com, and if you want to see any of my actual photography, because I do take pictures for a living, bcapphoto.com is my actual photography website where all my clients will go.
Excellent. Very good. Mr. Evans, how about you? Where can we find you online?
You can find me by searching my name on Google.
Just search Robert Evans on Google, and you'll come.
Third one, there is a producer that's a little more popular than I am. I think he's number 1 and I'm number 2 or 3. But my website is at Robert Evans or robertevans.com. Instagram and Twitter are at Robert Evans. Facebook is Robert Evans Studios. But there's always that famous box Google where you can find lots about me if you want.
Excellent. Well, we will put all the links to that in the show notes. And if you were looking for me, you'll find me over at my website, which is momentsindigital.com, or I'm at Bruce Clark with an E at the end on most of the social networks. And I'm on Snapchat as at Bruce Clark 2, because there was already a Bruce Clark. So if you want to follow me on Snapchat, I've been Snapchatting our kitchen renos. So, but probably by the time this airs, hopefully those kitchen renos will all be done and it will be out of the dust zone. We'll see how it goes. And that brings us to the end of another show, so be sure to visit our website at thisweekinphoto.com. And thanks again for listening to TWiP Weddings, raising the bar one wedding at a time.